Hello and welcome to Crux Investor. We caught up early today with Rob Bruggeman. He's the CEO at Canstar Resources, TSX-V listed gold explorer with assets in Newfoundland. We talked to him about their recent fundraisers, how they're going to go about delivering value for shareholders at this early stage. Some pretty impressive samples from surface, 4,400 grams per ton. Not shabby. So we talk about that, and if you want our thoughts and opinions on the conversation, on the company itself, and how they're going to go about delivering this value, you can find that at cruxinvestor.com/club, where you can also find detailed company reports and analysis. There are commentaries from experts from around the world on a variety of companies and commodities, including gold. We've got training courses to help you with your diligence process, summaries of other interviews that we've done to save you some time, because we know you're busy. And if you want to join a thriving community of investors sharing their thoughts and ideas with each other in a nice, friendly and safe environment, free from judgment, trolling and abuse, go and join them at cruxinvestor.com/club. I think you'll like it. And if you could give us a like, it'd be appreciated. Leave your thoughts below. We'll get back to everyone. And if you want to see precisely what we talked about today, do take a look in the description below. Rob, how are you doing, sir?
I'm doing well. How are you?
Not too bad. Not too bad at all. So where in the world are you?
I'm based in Toronto, Canada.
Toronto, Canada. How is life in Toronto, Canada?
It's getting better. It's winter is almost behind us. We had a day last week where it was sunny and 20 degrees. Of course, then it went back down to -10. Right. But at least we've got some hope. I think there's hope on the COVID front and there's hope on the weather front. So it will look as good. That
sounds good to me. We're in the same boat. We're hoping for the good weather soon. I'm looking for those daffodils adorning our front lawn to burst into life. We're going to hear a new story today, so I'm excited about that. So appreciate you making some time for us. And it's a relatively new one too. But first, before we do get into that, can you give me a 1-minute overview of the story for people who perhaps haven't heard it before, and I'll pick up with some questions after that.
Sure. So Canstar is a Canadian-based exploration company, and we're focused on the island of Newfoundland, Canada. And Newfoundland is probably one of the hottest gold exploration plays right now because people have begun to realize the potential for high-grade orogenic style gold mineralisation. And last year in the fall, we picked up one of the biggest gold exploration land packages currently on the island. It's over 620 square kilometers. There's been very little exploration done on that. And most of that was done in the 1980s. But there's been enough done that there's over 20 high-grade gold occurrences at surface, spanning about 30 kilometers. So there's a lot of gold there at surface. Now we just need to find where it is in the ground.
Right. That's all chestnut. It's easy. Don't worry about it, Rob. It's easy. We should find out a little bit about you first, though. So tell me, what's your background and experience relevant to what you're about to do?
So my background is pretty unconventional, I think, as a mining CEO. So background is really corporate development and equity research and investment. So I was an equity research analyst focused mostly on small cap stocks in Canada. Then I worked on the proprietary trading desk for one of Canada's major banks. So basically trading the bank's money with a mandate of just make money, long, short, any sector, just make us money. And by virtue of being in Canada, I did, yeah. Even every year we had some phenomenal returns. Even in 2008, when I was there, we were still positive. And more importantly, I think it was a fantastic learning experience that I'm now trying to apply to the mining sector. So when I left that world, I said, I'm going to focus in on the mining sector, but really from an investment perspective, and try to apply the same fundamental principles, which is capital preservation, managing risk, and probably most importantly, the fundamental approach I used historically for investment was try to skew the odds in your favor. So it's, especially when you're talking junior mining, it's gambling. And you don't want it to be a coin toss where it's 50-50 and you make money or not. My notional rule of thumb at the bank was I want to be right 70% of the time. And I love research. It's really fundamentally what drives me. and have a passion for. So I do as much research, collect information as much as I could in a pretty compressed time frame, and then try to be right 70% of the time, but also when I was wrong, just cut my losses. And yeah, we had phenomenal returns, doing that. And so I'm trying to do the same thing here. So I'm learning as much as I can over time about the mining sector, and I've been in it now for 10 years and then researching it before that. We had some success recently. I was involved and still am involved in a company called Abra Silver, and that's done very well. And I've worked with a couple of other mining companies, and some of which have been a learning experience in terms of what not to do. I'm not going to name names on that, but just not what you want to see in a mining company, or any company for that matter, from an investment perspective.
But like what? Tell me about that. I think it's important. Those lessons are as important to you as the successes, if not more important. So what were the lessons that you learned there, and the things that you're not going to repeat?
So one major one that I really didn't appreciate as much when I was an equities analyst was the importance of the board of directors. Because normally you think, well, it's a management team, it's a technical team. The board is just there for oversight, which is true. But I think in many cases the board gets taken for granted. And I saw examples where we had directors that had virtually no equity holdings in the company, and looking back, you could see their viewpoint on the company wasn't really it wasn't the same as an investor. You can see why. I mean, when I put significant money into a company and I work as a director, my goal is to make money on that. So there's good alignment. When you see those people that are there for maybe some options, or maybe even just a retainer, you have to wonder, why are you doing this? Why are you involved with this company if you don't have skin in the game? I mean, I'll be honest, being involved with Canstar, I don't take a big salary. It's quite small. I put my own money in, but I want a lot of options, because I'm not here to make a couple of $100,000 a year. I want to make millions on the equity. And I don't think anyone's going to complain if that happens, because as an investor, you're going to be making money. I mean, the only way I make money is off my investment or off the options. So I think that's kind of unique. And when you,
well, I wouldn't say it's unique. It's definitely rare, because we see all too often board directors paying themselves serious amounts of salary, and then using some of that money to buy shares because it looks good, the optics look good, and take the options, and take a director's fee, and take a consultancy fee. So I agree with you. There's some fun and games out there. So you learned the hard way that sort of thing happens. What else did you pick up along the way? Intrigued. Yeah,
and so just to clarify that point, I didn't mean to say unique. I should have said important. I think it's crucially important they have that alignment. The other thing I saw is the importance of metallurgy is a big one. Well, it really, we know jurisdiction's important as well. But one thing I realized is, metallurgy, because it's very easy for companies to talk about resources and drilling and, how many ounces do you have? But eventually, those need to be economic ounces. And if they're not, there can be a tendency with some companies where if the metallurgy is going to be challenging, you don't do the work. And that's just not right. It's tempting, sure, but if it's not economic, stop wasting your company's money and move on to something that will be, and stop pulling the wool over people's eyes.
That's interesting. We've spoken to a few companies like that, a handful of companies like that in the last 12 months, but they're hoping to crack the code with some new technology, and maybe some will. In fact, one has, others not yet. And I think that's the other thing. It takes a long time to waiting around for a technology will come along and solve your problems. So it's very hard to walk away from. So, Rob, tell me this. I was sort of reading up, and we've obviously interviewed the Abra Silver guys as well. What was your contribution to that? What did you walk in and find?
So yeah, Abra Silver. Originally, I was a consultant to the company because the team was based out of Argentina and they had a great asset, but the wrong team. And when I got involved with that, they were $1 million in the hole, and they were defaulting on their property agreements. So, in that case, what do you have? You have a team that isn't working. You've got no cash to explore, and in fact, it's questionable whether you even own your property. So that was a cleanup scenario. Fortunately, it worked out. But in that case, I merged with another company called Aethon Minerals. They had a bit of cash and they had a great team. So then put together again the property, put together the team, and it's been a 10-bagger. And I think there's still more potential there. So that's exactly the way you want it to work out. I still am a big investor there. I'm chairman of the board. And that's been my baby.
So let's talk about the fact that where you've come from should also inform the way that you're going to be talking to the market, because you know what investors want to hear. But at the same time, you've also got to deliver those things. So who have you brought on to help you and enable you to deliver the things that you're going to need to talk to the market about?
Yeah, so the one thing I'm not is a geologist. And generally speaking, with an exploration kind of, especially grassroots type exploration, you probably do want a geologist running the company because of that area of expertise. I mean, I bring the investment type mentality that geologists typically wouldn't bring. But to make up for that inadequacy that I have, I like the learning curve. I appreciate that, and that's part of why I'm here. But the other thing I've done is I've formed a technical advisory committee, and that consists of 3 people with PhDs in geology. So they'll know much more about geology than I've ever known. So one of those is Lawrence Winter from Altius Minerals, and so that's based in Newfoundland, and they know that's their backyard. So Lawrence knows the property very, very well. In fact, it was Lawrence and Altius that put it together, and we optioned it from them. I have Dr. David Palmer, who people may recognize from originally Probe Mines, which was sold to Gold Corp. Now he's running Probe Metals. So he's done a lot of work in gold exploration in Ontario and Quebec, which can be applied to Newfoundland as well. And then just recently we brought on Dr. Laurie Curtis. And so he has a 40 plus year background as a geologist. He's formed companies like Intrepid. And then he was also a mining analyst in Toronto as well. So he's got both the technical background as well as capital markets. So, they're pretty critical in terms of supplementing, what I bring to the table and oversight. And I think pretty impressive roster for a company that has a 16 million market cap.
Yeah. So, but it's important that they actually do things. They're not just there to pick up some stipend from you and many others. Again, it's a model we see. People just want to sit on the board or advisory, and they'll sit on as many as they can. It's nice, cheap money for doing nothing. So how are you integrating them into what you're doing? What have you challenged them with helping you to do?
Yeah, that's a good question. I mean, you don't want to just say, hey, I've got these people and they don't do anything. They just look nice. So first of all, we don't pay them anything. They do get options. So David Palmer is actually a director of the company as well. So he gets options for that. Laurie Curtis, we brought on just recently, and we gave him an option package as well. And then Lawrence Winter doesn't get paid, but because Altius optioned the property to us, they're currently 11% shareholders, and that will go up over time with some additional option payments. And with the exception of Laurie so far, they're also investors. So Lawrence has put his own money in. Dave Palmer has put his own money in, and I think over time Laurie will put money in as well.
Okay,
so that's even better.
Right,
they're putting money in.
So, what have you challenged them to do for you?
Well, the big challenge that we have as a company is we've got all this gold at surface. This high grade. I mean, we've got one grab sample that was over 4,000 grams per ton, which is fantastic. But the question is, where do you get economic quantities of gold mineralization? And companies have tried back in the 80s, in 2009 to 2011, and they've managed to find gold mineralization, but it's over fairly narrow widths. So it's really figuring out, in this case, it's structural geology and what are the tools. Because on the one hand, it was fantastic. We've got the 620 kilometer claim package. There's a potential strike length of 95 kilometers. The flip side of that is, how do you manage that? How do you take, and we've got a small team, a core team in Newfoundland is 3 people, and then we bring on additional workers. But even if we have a team of 10 people, how do you manage to break down a property that size in a reasonable time frame and with a small budget? So that's really what they're tasked with doing is, look at the information that we have. Can we use tools like soil sampling, geophysics, and even prospecting? Collectively with that 100 years of information, it's asking the team the right questions and having a different approach to say, have you thought about this? Have you tried that? It's guiding the work to say, where do we go and what do we do? And without a massive budget.
Well, I mean, therein lies the challenge. You and hundreds of others before you, right? You sit on these large land packages, and people get excited. Oh, we're sitting on huge land packages. And I just go, that's a huge liability, because you're going to need to spend money to work out what you've got there, right? So it means nothing as an investor. And you, with your investor hat back on, what is your plan? Because you again, there's lots of orogenic stories out there. You chase high grades, you might get some bulk, or you might be just looking at bulk. Who knows? But with some of the grades, there's sample graphs that you've been mentioning, and they're off the charts. They're insane. I mean, was 1,100 something? There's one of them at 11. I mean, it's huge.
Yeah, the highest one is 4,485 grams per ton.
Yeah. And similar all the way down. So it's very exciting headline grabbing stuff, but it doesn't pay the bills. So with a limited budget, and I know you're tight with your G&A and salaries and all of that sort of thing. So it's all good stuff. What do you think you're going to have to do in terms of be able to roll this thing out? Are you going to have to bring partners in? Are you going to have to go out and raise something, get some of those big headlines out there, get people excited, raise a lot more money than you have to date? I mean, how do you go about it? Because it's tough at the beginning.
Yeah, it's tough at the beginning, and it's tough to say exactly what you want to do. So, for example, right now, we're still setting the budget, but I mean, the budget's going to be, call it $1.5 million in exploration, which is not a lot. And especially when you start drilling, I mean, this is not a property where we can just go poke a whole bunch of holes in it, and use probability that poke enough holes, you're probably going to get lucky and find something. I guess we rely on conventional tools. I mean, soil sampling works. It's not overly expensive, and it gets us into the right area. Then we use prospecting. We've got some great prospectors in Newfoundland, looking at rocks and finding those high grade samples. And so different pieces of the property at different stages. There has been a bit of drilling done, but it's all shallow, and it hasn't hit those big bonanza grades or intercepts yet. But I think we're getting close to that. The biggest thing is understanding the structure. And it's also a situation where we're quite fortunate, because there's another company to the north of us in Newfoundland called Newfound Gold. And they're about, so same rocks, similar style mineralization. They're about 2 years ahead of us. So they had their discovery hole in 2019, and they hit 20 meters of 93 grams per ton of gold. So that's kind of what we're aspiring for. I mean, their drill program back in 2019, or their exploration program, was $600,000. yeah, and they spent about I think call it $2 million in the 2 years before that. So I don't think our exploration budget is too wild, but it's what we're hoping is get into the right area and at least, with maybe 10 holes initially, you hit some good grades in that and hopefully some spectacular grades where then you can go out and raise more money because people say, okay, yeah, you've demonstrated the potential. Now go do some more, or, drill wider.
But how do you take the luck out of it? I guess that's what I'm trying to get at, Rob. How do you take the luck out of this? How do you? So it's not a kind of drill and hope scheme here. I get the peers around you. There's some nice names around you on similar rock, but I'm trying to work out what your baby steps are to get to that point with the limited budget that you've got.
Yeah, and unfortunately, there's no sexy answer. I mean, we could say, yeah, we're going to go out and use artificial intelligence. No, it's not. There's not enough data. It's not going to work. I mean, we have to use old-fashioned brains, quite frankly. But what you can do is, you can try to skew the odds in your favor. So, I mean, where we have outcrop and we can trench, then we'll do that. That's a hell of a lot cheaper than drilling. So if we can trench, and that's the nice thing about Newfoundland, because we're dealing with gold that starts at the surface, and it's really nice high grades. It's not 800 meters, 1,000 meters down. At least we can see some things at surface. It's not great. We get a lot of till, not that much outcrop, but at least it's pretty close. So even when we start drilling, it's going to be 100 meters, 200 meters, but we'll try to trench first. And if you get a trench, where it's 10 meters of 10 grams, well, let's drill underneath that trench. We'll try to figure out the orientation, drill underneath that. So at least, I think I'm going to get something similar to what you see at surface. And based on structure or based on mag, IP doesn't really seem to work here, but we use mag. Let's see if we can hit something where maybe you get a fold, or you get, what's very important here is these cross-cutting structures seem to be very important. So let's look for those cross-cutting structures. Let's look for certain features. Let's have a trench at surface. It's not going to be 100% success, but at least hopefully we got a pretty good chance. Then you go, okay, if we hit maybe 50 meters under the trench, then let's go down deeper and see if it continues, or depending on the orientation, let's test the lateral width of that. So that's the approach. I mean, it's old-fashioned prospecting, soil sampling, mag, and nothing. I think the only new thing is really the interpretation, and to that extent, what the other companies are doing and their evolution of the understanding is beneficial. I mean, Newfound Gold's going to do 200,000 meters of drilling. Well, what they learn in terms of what works, what doesn't work, that's going to help us, and hopefully we'll have fewer misses.
Right. Talk to me about some of the things that you can control. Precious metal market has come off, right? After this year, I think a lot of charts for gold companies, explorers, developers look the same, for sure. What are the things that you can control that you are going to be able to go back to the market with? Because again, you're with your fund manager hat on, your investor hat on, you've got to manage your budget in terms of what you need to do on the ground, good old-fashioned geology, and how you talk to the market to get them to look at you versus the next guy, of which there are quite a few.
Yeah, and that it does go back to what are you buying here? And as much as I want to promote the story, I don't want to over promote, because I want to get people in at a reasonable value in the context of the market. If I go and spend $200,000 on a marketing campaign, first of all, it's bad use of capital, but because it's not going into the ground. But also, it's going to pop my stock. I probably can't raise money off of it. Or if I do, I'm not going to have a loyal shareholder base, because they're going to buy in at the top. And then when I stop spending that money, it's going to pull back. So ideally, I like to see it go up gradually based on the returns. You shouldn't price this based on a discovery. Price it based on the merits of the property. So that's part of it. It's bringing in the right types of investors as well. So this is, it may take 2 years. It's not, hopefully we get lucky in 6 months and we have a killer drill result and we're off to the races, but it may take longer. So we try to bring in, longer term investors as opposed to traders. And then, the gold price is interesting. And, when we first funded this property in September of last year, and I capped the raise at 2 million. We could have raised a lot more, but we wanted to preserve the capital structure. Now, because prices have come back, it'd be tougher to raise that money.
Well, you found it tougher. You went out to raise 1.75 and actually closed 1.29. So it was a tougher environment.
Yeah, that was in December. It was flow through, so it was a limited window because we had to close by the end of the year. But yeah, even there, I thought, some brokers would be able to contribute orders of about 400, 500,000, and it was almost zero.
Why? What's going on out there?
Well, it's fund flows. So when gold is hot, there's lots of money flowing in, and you deploy that capital. Then other times, like now or recently, when gold is pulled back, people don't want to put the money in, which is, it's a bit ironic because if you deployed capital in August of last year at the top, well, you're down on your, whether you bought gold or gold stocks. You're losing money. And, Rick Rule always talks about this. If you want something, it's a certain price and then it goes on sale and it's 30, 40% off. Normally you'd say, hey, there's that thing I wanted and it's on sale. I'm going to go buy it. In the mining space, you go, oh, it's down 40%. Geez, I don't want it anymore. So yeah, there's better value now. I think gold, hopefully has bottomed here. But even, $1,700 gold is nothing bad. It's especially in Canadian dollars. It's an attractive price.
1650 I'm happy with. Yeah. It's all good. Yeah. Absolutely.
And we're not a producer. If I can find a gold deposit, if it's economic at 1,700 or 2,000 or 1,500, it's
all good.
Not my focus day to day. It's more, can I find something that's a million ounces plus? That's really what.
But to your point, it's about are you going to be able to find the right types of investors? Because I agree with you. If there's a discount at a store, I'm buying, and it seems to be that the gold bugs have gone quiet. They're unsure about what's going on in the marketplace at the moment. No one's able to articulate a story which tells us how people are thinking, why the markets are behaving this way. We've seen all sorts of strange things like GameStop and similar silver squeezes and so forth, and money being pumped into the economy like never before. Yet the market's not reacting as expected, and the good old safe haven of gold ain't working.
Well, I think to some extent it is. It's just I think gold was more forward-looking, and it typically is. And gold really ran up in advance of things like copper and oil, and it should. Those things get consumed, gold gets stored. I think maybe it ran too hard, too fast as well. But at the end of the day, if you look at still the environment we're in, I think you're going to continue to see a lot of stimulus, and I think the governments and the central banks have become somewhat addicted to that. Certainly, I look at a number of governments around the world, Canada's being one of these. In the past, they'd run small deficits. Now they've got massive deficits, but the voters are okay with it. And I think we'll be okay with it for the foreseeable future, just because money's still cheap and people like that liquidity. So I think this liquidity is going to continue to flow in. They say there's no inflation, but in reality, those dollars are just going into the market. They're going into housing. And I think there is a different form of inflation, which is why if you look at the true value of money, I think people are putting it in hard assets because that's what you do in that kind of an environment. Whether it's gold, silver, copper, oil, physical assets are going to be worth more because currencies are just going to be worth less and less.
So you think?
And I think gold is probably going to go up again for that reason as well.
Right. When?
Well, I think it's in the process of bottoming. I think it's pulled back almost 50% from the highs. I guess, and even don't want to get into Bitcoin or other things, but I mean, gold is acting fairly rationally as well. I mean, you see bond yields go up. You would expect gold prices to pull back. But touching on that, the other reality of governments and central banks pumping in all this liquidity, these governments can't allow rates to go up too much because they're going to bankrupt themselves and they're going to halt their economies, which is not the goal. So these governments and central banks are going to do everything in their power. They'll let rates go up a little bit, but then they're going to cap them. And I think you do that with pumping liquidity into the system. Keep rates low, and that's a good environment for gold and hard assets for sure.
Do you think people are getting a little bit confused with about how to invest now? Because you've got Bitcoin going on a tear, you've got NFT, non-fungible tokens out there. People are getting excited about, which to the old guard seems nuts. So does cryptocurrency seem nuts. But because we've done things the same way forever doesn't mean it's right, and we shouldn't have one eye on the future too. Do you think people are being distracted by things like that?
I think there is a distraction, and I think there's you always get a new generation of investor as well. When I was in my 20s, I didn't invest in gold. And if you'd asked me at that point, are you going to go put 10% of your wealth into gold? And that's, I think, I wasn't around in World War II. I'm not used to, where I had a friend who actually came from Nigeria, and he talked about how they had gold actually hidden in the driveway, and the day came where they had to escape and you dig up the gold. And we said, well, we're not living in that kind of an environment. But over time, you get to realize, the benefits of gold. And I suspect, there are newer generations, and certainly the Robinhood and Reddit crowd who probably don't hold any gold, and they're more likely to buy Bitcoin and cryptocurrencies, and it's working for them. But I think in the long run, I mean, gold's been around for thousands of years. There are genuine reasons for its value, and I think that'll continue with the scarcity. And again, not to be distracted by Bitcoin, but I mean, the scarcity argument for Bitcoin originally was intriguing until they came out with 2,000 other cryptocurrencies, and suddenly you say, well, Bitcoin is scarce, sure, but nothing else. Whereas gold, it's still going to be scarce. There's not a lot of it. It gets more expensive to mine, and it's going to go up and down. But the long-term trend, I think, is your friend.
Oh, nice cliche. That sounds like a Rick Roll one too. I'm speaking to him on Friday. Because he's retiring, semi-retiring. So we're going to have to get another dose of some of his mantras and cliches before he goes. Okay, well, I wanted to just ask you about that because of your background, but back to what you've got laid out ahead of you with this project. What I'm hearing is you're being careful with the money. There's nothing kind of cute about what you're doing. You're trying not to raise fast money off the back of hype. You want to do things the right way. But even then, at some point, you're going to have to make some decisions. So where's the point where you think you're going to have to make some decisions about how you develop your assets out here in terms of, whether you do it or you have to bring partners in or you have to go and raise some capital?
Yeah, so it's really an evolution. And I guess, there are really two things. So one is we want to build a company that's a platform. So I love our Golden Baie project. I think it's highly prospective. I think there's a high likelihood of discovery, but it's not 100%. I mean, I'll be honest. There's a chance that you get lots of gold at surface, but it doesn't hang together, and you're never going to be able to mine it. There is that possibility. So, going back to the trading analogy, well, let's do the work. But if it's a loser, then let's cut our losses before you blow your brains out. I mean, you had all these mantras on the trading desk, like live to fight another day, never waste all your capital. So the other thing we're doing with Canstar, I'm trying to do there, is to build a platform as well. So in the event that we start to see that, we can't make anything of the project, well, then we're going to take that team and that platform and that mentality, and we're going to go find another project. But in the meantime, just to be specific, last year we only had 2 months out in the field. We acquired the option, deal closed late September, and we had about 2 months to get out into the field before there was snow. And so we went to a small piece of the property where there had been this high-grade discovery. We did 5 trenches. 2 of those were very good, and we had a couple of intercepts in one of the trenches, for example, 3 meters of 10 grams per ton of gold, which is good. So potentially, you could drill under that, and hopefully, there's a wider intercept. But that would still be, it would be a decent intercept. What we're going to go out and do first is, we don't think the trenches were long enough. The other thing we're doing right now, actually, is we've got one of our guys who's a geophysicist is in the field doing ground mag, because we want to see what's going on in the ground. We can kind of see it on the airborne, but it's not detailed enough. So it's going to be $30,000 for a ground mag program. But we're going to see what are the targets for drilling. We're going to extend those trenches. It's thousands of dollars, not hundreds of thousands. We have this other target to the north of that called the blowout target. Last year we did a soil grid on it. It was about 1.25 kilometers long now by 400 meters wide. Lots of good grab samples. That one we will do some trenches on early on the program, but there's not that much outcrop, so we'll probably have to drill it. But that's already a 1+ kilometer target with number of samples, at least 10 grams per ton of gold, in some cases 30. We've got a couple of boulders there that have some base metals, have some silver in them as well. So there's a lot going on in there. So again, that's another area we're doing ground mag. And then, this year we'll put some drill holes in that. They'll be maybe 100, 150 meters deep, but it's a budget that even say you spend $1 million, hopefully, that's going to give us some good returns where people then say, this is worthy of maybe a $5 million exploration program. We have to prove this as well. If the right opportunity comes along where there's a good investor who wants to put more money in, we'll take that as well. But it's a bit of an approach where I don't want to raise $5 million now, really dilute my capital structure, say bring in a strategic. I mean, if I brought in a strategic right now on the merits of the property, give up 10% of the company, say, well, I'm going to get, even with a premium, I'm going to get $2.5 million. I mean, we're gambling a bit here, but I'd rather take the money that we have, get some good results with that, and then maybe that strategic comes in down the road for 25 million. I'd rather see that. It's risk return. It's putting the money in the ground in the right places. That's where I'm counting on my technical team and elements of luck as well. But actually, we've got one prospector who says gold doesn't fall from the sky, and we know there's gold there somewhere. it's, it does come at surface, close to surface. But yeah, it's just finding the best parts of it. It's not, 3 meters, 10 grams is good, but where's the 10 meters, 20 meters, 100 meters? We've got good strike lengths, but it's not going to fly if it's just a 2 meter seam over a kilometer. I mean, you can't mine that.
Yeah. Okay. Well, Rob, I appreciate you going through the story with us. I think you've got a plan ahead of you. You just got to execute it. Stay in touch. Let us know how you get on. I know you've been very cautious, and I appreciate the honesty today. But I'd love to hear how you get on. Pretty impressive numbers so far, albeit at this very, very early stage. I'm intrigued to see how you get on. So we'll speak to you soon.
Yeah, no, I appreciate the opportunity to tell the story, and hopefully we'll come back with some really good results and a much bigger market cap.